everybody, I'm Tom Vassell and welcome to Week in Review. This is a video that we put out on the Dice Tower each week where we tell you all the different videos that we put out over the past week and give you ratings on them. And then, at least on the reviews that we've done. Then if you want to see the entire review, we'll link to stuff in the description below. So here we go.
Hey everybody, Z Garcia here. Last week I reviewed two things. I reviewed Cascadia expansion called Landmarks, which I gave a 7 out of 10 to. This one gives you a lot of content, but it's really focused on high player counts. It brings the game up to be a 5 or 6 player game. It gives you a mode in which to speed gameplay up, especially good for 5 or 6. And then it gives you the aforementioned Landmarks, which I thought was actually kind of the least interesting part of the game. It gives you a few different things to do for a few points. It does not seem to be worth the overhead, really. But I think the game, especially if you are someone who is looking to play Cascadia with more, that expansion is worth it. It manages to do that thing, add a couple of extra players at the top end. It manages to do that better than a lot of expansions I've seen in the past attempt to do that. So for that, it gets a recommend. And then I reviewed Cyberion, which I gave a 9 out of 10 to. This is the latest in the Omniverse series of games for 1 or 2 players, solitaire, little sort of puzzly adventures. This one is an excellent one. It's one of the best ones, I think, in which you are manipulating cards in order to fix these little broken robots. You are always under pressure. You always have to think smartly about what you do, and the game has a really nice feeling of progression in which everything you do or attempt to do gets you better at doing some aspect of the game. Everything you spend makes it so that the next time you do that thing, you'll be better at it. And it has a really nice cascading feel. I very much enjoy the rewarding nature of the game while staying tense and interesting and engaging throughout. So there you go. That's it for me. I'll see you on the next one.
Week in review time. Roy Canada here, and this week I took a look at 2 different games. The first one is Dune Imperium Uprising. This is basically, they took Dune Imperium and added kind of like stuff from the second movie in there and more of the stuff from the first book because it's all one book. And they just basically changed it up, adding in worms and adding in spies and adding in these contracts and adding in a 6-player mode and things like that to the game. And I just really like what they've done with the game and how they've kind of like made it a little bit more dynamic, and I just really enjoy Dune Imperium in general, and being able to throw worms in there and having all these new characters is a lot of fun, so 10 out of 10 for me. And then also we took a look at Marvel Legendary What If. It's like basically a new core box of Marvel Legendary, basically a new jumping on point for that game as well. And then it's just kind of cool having all the different what if characters in there. It is a pretty difficult game to get into, and I do think like it would have been nice to have like at least some of the stuff be a little bit more like newbie friendly in it. I gave it a 7.5. I do feel like the setup time for Marvel Legendary is a lot harder than I remember. I mean, I remember it being annoying, but also I was a little bit more lenient when there wasn't other Marvel games that weren't so easy to set up. But I still really enjoy Marvel Legendary. I still think it's a lot of fun to play, so check that one out if you're into Marvel Legendary. And then also I did a comparison in between the original Dune and the Dune Imperium Uprising. So kind of like seeing what's different in those two things. That's another video I did for this week. Anyway, that was my week.
Hi, I'm Wendy Yee, and I have 3 engine building games coming at you this week. So the first one is Isle of Trains. It's a cute little card game where you're building up these trains in front of you. You're eventually trying to deliver goods. There's a lot of positive interaction in it, which I did like the positive interaction, even though there were moments that I felt like, oh, it's really hard to make that choice to help someone else. But I think at the end of the day, I gave it a 6 because it just was really random. The dudes that you pull out are random. The cards that you get are random. And there's so much going on in the deck when it comes to like cards that you can build that don't just give you basic goods. You've got these cabooses that all have special powers. You have buildings that all have special powers. The iconography is not great, so you have to look it all up. So it just feels muddled with how big that deck is to kind of like feed through and work through. So that's why I gave that a 6. Next is Bazaars of Ubar. This was a 6.5. It is a game where you're trying to collect these tiles and you put them in front of you, and tiles can trigger other tiles that you've built before. So it's like a tiny bit of engine building, but not a ton. And you're eventually just trying to trade in goods. Now for this one, I felt like it was good because it was short. It was like 15, 20 minutes. Like, it plays very, very quickly, and there are good decisions, but also, once again, randomness was in here. Like, the way that the tiles came out, the way they cost was dependent on what was adjacent to them, and I felt like that was just kind of like, okay, why? Why does this tile cost 3 more time units? Also, I felt like it was almost too short to enjoy what you did each round, because the end of the round triggered so quickly with those time units. You're like, oh, I did a little bit of a thing. So 6.5 for that. Last one is Arborea. This one was a much bigger game, and I did enjoy the engine building part of this. I thought it was fun. Being able to make the different action areas where you can drop off your workers stronger by adding out these cubes so you get extra abilities and powers when you go to those spots. I thought that was very cool. The interaction of the little time tracker. So basically you put a meeple down and he goes on this little escalator kind of thing to the side, and when you move it, you can choose whether to jump off or not. However, you have that moment of you're like, do I leave my dude out? I want to be able to play him next turn, but will someone else move that track? If they don't, then I can't just make him jump off and play him. So I wish you could with that. There's just a little bit of interaction there that I found frustrating. So I still gave this, I don't think I said my score yet, a 7.5. So I did enjoy it overall. I think the engine building was a lot of fun. It had some cool elements, the way that you're trying to set up your little board in front of you, or your tableau of cards, and getting the monsters out on top of that. I enjoyed that. The graphic design made it difficult to play for me because it was a very tall board with very small icons. I don't have good eyes, so I struggled with that. So 7.5 is right where it's at. It's a good game, not amazing, because it has a few tweaks and issues there that maybe I would enjoy more if those were changed. But yeah, 7.5 is solid for Arborea. So anyways, that was my week in review. Let's see who's next.
Hello folks, and welcome to Chris Time. Now I'm going to be talking about the games I reviewed. First off, My Island, I gave a 5. This is Reiner Knizia's follow-up to My City, and even though I gave this a 5, I really enjoyed the tile-laying game that it started as. It's mostly a 5 because it started to feel repetitive, and the legacy was a huge letdown, actually. About halfway, 2/3 of the way through the campaign, it became worse, so that's a big letdown. But if you really enjoyed My City and you just kind of want more of it, also this isn't bad. It's an interesting thing, so a 5 from me. Bazaars of Ubar, I gave a 6. This is a game that has a bit of a time track. You're collecting tiles, you're building them out into an interesting engine, but ultimately I found the time track was just not that important. You pretty much always took 2 or 3 tiles around, and then what you traded in was just okay. One I'm not coming back to, so a 6. Isle of Trains, the 7.5. Multi-use card game, you're building up trains, you can help other players. It has some very interesting aspects to it that I think make it pop a little bit more than just kind of a simple little card game. Really enjoyed this one. However, next up, Books of Time, I gave an 8. Books of Time has that gimmick of these little binders and you put pages into it, and that's the engine that you're building. Could it have just been cards? Yes, but I like that this adds to the aesthetic, offers something new, something I'm always happy with at the end of each game, so an 8 for Books of Time. Arborea, an 8.5. This is a thinky game. Danny Garcia, a designer that I've really appreciated a lot since Barcelona. I gave a very high review. This is a worker placement game. You put a worker out there, and it kind of scoots forward over the course of time, and you can have them jump off. But the longer you wait, the better rewards you get. That's a great gimmick. It's very cool looking. There's a lot going on, but I think it's worth the effort. This is such a cool game. Arborean 8.5. Siberion 8.5. Great solo game from Shadi Torby, who also did Onirim and some of the other Oniverse games. I think this one manages to be really smooth, really satisfying, giving you lots of powers as you complete things. Really worth checking out if you like solo games. Forest Shuffle, an 8.5 as well. A nice, fun, nature-themed game, actually kind of similar to Isle of Trains, but I really like what's going on with this one. You play cards out, you pay cards to pay for those cards, and then you can just build up a neat forest that has different scoring synergies. There have been some comments and reviews saying that there's some dominant strategies, and I don't know, this is not one that I'm going to be playing so many times that I'm like, yes, I have to find all these dominant strategies. It's just a fun one, and I'll introduce it to people. And for me, it works really well, so an 8.5. And lastly, Dune Imperium Uprising, a 9. I really enjoy this one. I think it tightens up some of the things from the original game. And this is a hard one to give a number to because also it is so similar to the original game. I understand that there's a lot of different conflicting thoughts on this one, but if this is just a standalone product you're looking for, I think it's great. And so if you don't have the original, you can just jump in on this one. If you already have both, don't worry about it. Just figure out what works for you. But for me, it's a 9 because I also just love all the games of the Dune Imperium line. So that has been my week.
First up this week, I took a look at Arborea. Man, did I like this game. It really just gave you those endorphins that you want in a game, right? It was so fulfilling to watch your strategy kind of come to fruition when you get off the train, I don't know, that path that moves you along, you get off at the right spot. It's so satisfying. Unfortunately, I think that there were a couple mishaps or missteps here in the graphics of the game. I think the icons could have been bigger. The board, while beautiful and vibrant, needed to be toned down a little bit so you can really focus on what you're doing and where you go to do what you need to. So for me, I came down at 8 on Arborea. I also took a look at Forest Shuffle, another 8 for me. I enjoyed this game, the kind of combo-tastic feel. Again, Tom compared it to Earth. I think in theme it is, but this one is all about the end game scoring, kind of maximizing that. I love the multi-use cards. You don't use them for multiple things, but you choose a side of the card and you have to position them right in your forest in order to, at the end, really maximize on that scoring. This game grew with me over time. My first play, I did find it to be pretty frustrating because you're just inundated with information and options. With repeated plays, that does go away, and that's why I came down at 8 on this game. And finally, I took a look at Cascadia Landmarks. I was a 7.5 on Cascadia Landmarks. This is an expansion that I didn't know I needed, kind of came out of nowhere. Cascadia is one of my favorite games. I never thought it needed more. But that's exactly what this expansion does. It gives you more. If you play at lower player counts, it gives you new ways to score the animals. It gives you new ways that the tiles are used, the lands. Some of them have 3 lands on them. Some kind of form peninsulas. So it kind of switches that up a little bit. But it also gives you the option to play with 5 and 6 players. And if you play at that player count, also a way to speed the game up so it doesn't bog down. So, do I think the expansion is necessary? No. Am I glad I can put it in my base game and just leave it there in case I need it? Absolutely. So for me, Cascadia Landmarks is a 7.5. That's it. Let's keep going.
Okay, so for me, last week we did a catch-a-palooza of Wallenstein, where we played through Wallenstein and went through the game. I think I would still give Wallenstein an 8.5. It's still a solid game for me. Really enjoy the cube tower and just how it plays. A lot of fun for me. We did some all-play live plays. We did an all-play live play of 3 different games, which was a lot of fun. Really cool games, including the remake of the classic Through the Desert from Knizia. We reviewed the new Dune Imperium Uprising, which was kind of a tricky game to give a rating to. I give it a 9 because it's fantastic. I love it. But it is kind of a reworking of the original Dune Imperium. But there's a lot of things it does better or differently, I guess would be the best way to put it. Roy did a comparison of them too. I'm sure he mentioned that already. Forest Shuffle. This is another one I gave a 9 to. I gave some very high ratings this week. And this one's just a small little card game. I really had a lot of fun playing through this one. My Island, this one I gave a 5 to. This is a legacy style game. Unfortunately, I found the game to be okay at best, and the legacy parts are actively not that great. Books of Time, this one I gave a 7 to. Not sure the best strategies game. I think the game is a little loose and fast with what to do next and where to go, but there's some really interesting concepts here, and I love the theming of it. A Catan Game and Talk went up last week. That's exciting. We recorded that months and months ago, but these take a lot of editing work where we play through. If you haven't seen this, I encourage you to give it a watch because these are a lot of work. And if you want to see more of these things done with some interesting games and such, let us know. We did Isle of Trains. I gave this an 8.5. This is a remake of the old little card game, Isle of Trains. This one's a little bit bigger, but still a nice card game. Just a very enjoyable, using cards as resources. There's 2 games this week that were like that, Isle of Trains and Forest Shuffle. Me and Spencer from Game Nerds did the top 10 best-selling games of September 2023. I did 7 Pronto game reviews. If you ever think I'm getting too positive, watch those because that's 7 reviews and only one of them, I believe, was positive. I did Arborea. another 9. That's 3 9s this week. Arborea, a big hefty Euro game in which you're placing workers on these moving tracks and jumping off and then taking a whole bunch of actions and a really cool resource selection and the brightest board you've ever seen. I really, really like this one a lot. So these are the games that are coming out. These are all the different things we put out over the past week. Oh, yeah, we did a role-playing game. How did it go? Well, I don't know, because I'm recording this before that we recorded that. But I hope it went well. I put a lot of work into it. We'll see. Anyway, until next time, I'm Tom Vassell, and you've been watching Week in Review on the Dice Tower.